My kind of big moment, I guess, the career changer for me was I booked Panic at the Disco in the Cardiff Barfly. It's a 200 cap show with them as they were just starting to break. I called up my then bosses at the time, which was actually John Mack, who now books Reading and Leeds. But I wanted to upgrade the show myself and put it in the university, and they gave me the freedom to do it. And that was the springboard for me, because that meant that Barfly then gave me the freedom to start booking gigs in other venues. I moved to Kili because Stuart gave me an opportunity to go. He said to me, come over and I'm starting this festival. I think it was called Hemispheres at the time rather than Sonosphere, as it went on to become. My first big one with Kili was I got in really early on Katy Perry and ended up doing kind of Birmingham NIA with her and a couple of arenas. That first couple of tours with Katy was split between Kili, Livenation and SJM.
Why did you then decide to leave being a promoter?
I took quite a few knocks. Once Warped Tour and Sonosphere had kind of run its course, it became a lot harder to kind of battle for bands, either to pick up the new stuff or actually hold on to the ones I was doing. That was all happening at a time when I'd fallen into the world of like YouTube. I'd got involved off the back of doing Warped Tour at Ali Pali. I'd had a phone call from a music industry friend who'd moved into the YouTube world. He called me and said, Mark, you've done Ali Pali with Warped Tour. I think his words were along the lines of, these kids who are big on YouTube have booked Ali Pali and sold 7,000 tickets and we're sponsoring it, but they don't know what they're doing. Can you help them out? It was an event called Summer in the City, and it had gone from being a meetup in a park that got shut down by police because too many kids turned up to a ticketed event with 7,000 people. And my eyes were opened up to this world where kids and parents were elbowing each other out the way to try and meet Zoella and Alfie and all the big YouTubers at the time.
So, Mark, I think you probably know the first question, which is, how did you get started in the music industry?
Like I guess a lot of your guests on the show, I was in a band myself, so never got anywhere with it. Realised I couldn't actually sing. So whilst I was at university in York, which is where I'm from originally anyway, I got a gig as a assistant promoter at a venue called Fibbers, which was owned by the Barfly Group at the time. So this is 2005 kind of time when I was 18, 19. Worked under a great mentor of mine, a guy called Tim Hornsby, who was the promoter at the venue, and learnt a lot about how it all worked. Handed my dissertation in just before my 21st birthday and got a phone call from the guys at Barfly to say the head promoter job at Cardiff had come up. So did I want to move there? So a few weeks later, I packed my stuff, moved to Cardiff, celebrated my 21st birthday down there and became the promoter at that venue. So a little 200 capper.
That's a sick job to come out of.
Yeah, it all worked out quite nice in that respect.
Barfly, I remember obviously the Birmingham one. I did my work experience there.
Yeah.
It was a really cool.
I did a month at the Birmingham one because when I was in Cardiff, they sent me down to work for a month for that one because I think it was struggling a little bit to get as many gigs in. Right. So they wanted someone to kind of go and see what was going on down there. So.
Awesome, man. That was a really cool chain.
Yeah. But my kind of big moment, I guess, the career changer for me was I was booking, because I was into all the emo and pop punk bands, I booked Panic at the Disco in the Cardiff Barfly. It's a 200 cap show with them as they were just starting to break. I DJ'd a club night the night before. I got a phone call at 9:30 on the morning that my show had gone on sale from Johnny at SJM, who was promoting them in London and elsewhere, saying that he wanted to buy my show off me because it had sold out. And I was a bit hungover, having DJ'd a club night the night before, didn't really know what was going on. And at that time, Barfly wasn't doing gigs in other venues. It was purely their own venues. So I called up my then bosses at the time, which was actually John Mack, who now books Reading Festival, Reading and Leeds, and said what was going on. But I wanted to upgrade the show myself and put it in the university. And they gave me the freedom to do it, and had a little bit of help from a friend at an agency who kindly, sneakily shared me a costing for that venue. So I would know what I was up against with Johnny trying to book it in himself. But that was the springboard for me, because that meant that Barfly then gave me the freedom to start booking gigs in other venues and trusted my kind of ear and my knowledge base. And then off the back of that, Livenation were looking for a promoter to bring to London to do the emo, pop punk, rock stuff, support like Andy Coppin and Stuart Galbraith, who was there at the time with Booking Download, and I guess give Johnny at SJM a bit of a run for his money. So me and Johnny are good friends now, but back then there was a little bit of kind of heatedness going on.
Rivalry.
Yeah, I think he won't mind me telling you this, but he told me when I told him I got the job, he said he'd make me kill myself within a year. So that was his style back then, as a kind of cutthroat industry. So, but we're now fast forward 20 plus years, and we're good friends. So, yeah. So I moved to London, started working at the Livenation was only there for 18 months before Stuart Galbraith left and started Kilimanjaro, and invited me to go join him there. So I was booking Sonosphere with Stuart, helped bring in Alan Day and Steve Tilley, who've gone on to be kind of directors there now. And during that time, I had an amazing kind of run of booking the likes of You Me at Six, Neck Deep, Partway Drive, all these kind of bands, and bringing Vans Warped Tour over to the UK and Europe as well, which was great. So, yeah, so that was kind of the start of things prior to getting into where I am now, doing the management side of stuff.
It's an awesome run in promotion. Like, how old were you when you took that show to the uni?
That was when I was 21, because I'd just moved to Cardiff. I was in my first year there. So
that is a seriously impressive job.
Yeah,
for a 21-year-old man. Like,
yeah, we actually upgraded it twice. It went from the 200 cap venue and my own venue, the Cardiff Barfly, to the 1,000 cap room in the uni, and then upgraded again to the 1,500 in the end. So, well, me and Mark Newey, who's the agent for Panic at the Disco, we joke about how I stayed at the venue doing all the work whilst John Mack and B. Roslow from Barfly came and took him for dinner and took all the glory for the show. So.
I'm not surprised, man, I guess. I mean, was that the sort of time, because I remember the Barfly running pretty high, it being like very, very successful at one point.
Yeah.
Were you then the driving force behind that expansion? Because
there was a gang of us at the time of like young promoters, many of whom have gone off now to either become agents or promoters at nationals. Barflies now, well, it became Mama Group, and then it got bought into the kind of Festival Republic Livenation world. So it still exists in terms of the Great Escape, but the venue side's obviously gone now. Yeah, there was me. There was Bex Majors, who I took over from her at Cardiff when she moved to work with Emma Banks and Mike Greek at what was Helter Skelter before they all became CAA. And then there's Ollie, who's now at Wasserman as an agent over there. So yeah, there's Gavin, Michael Lightford, who now runs Boardmasters and various other festivals. He was at Liverpool Barfly. So yeah, it was a breeding ground. And similar with Fibbers before that, where I was at with Tim. There's so many people now from the York scene that all worked at Fibbers that now work at London-based agencies and promoters.
Fucking awesome, man. Like, I mean, I remember, because I started the club when I was 21 and started booking Vans. That would have been my absolute dream. Yeah. Like, trajectory. Didn't get anywhere near that. But, like, that was literally, like, dream level shit.
Yeah.
What was the big difference when you moved to Livenation with, like, your sort of job role and how things went?
Actual wake-up thing for me that was a bit of a shock when I first moved to Livenation was that a lot of the agents that had me on speed dial when I was at Cardiff Barfly, that were like ringing me, emailing every day with gigs because they wanted to get their band gigs. They all had their own national promoters of choice already. So when I moved down and was starting to try and like get acts to do as a national, there was a lot more competition, and that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I think that's where I then kind of really focused in on a niche of doing the pop punk and emo stuff. So it was at that point, it was Johnny at SJM was really leading the charge on it. He had Mike M and all those bands that he'd found from the ground up. Mike M's first tour, he drove them around the country in a van himself just to get them over and make it stack up for them. So massive respect to him for that. And he was doing Give It a Name as well. So then there was me then chasing kind of on his coattails and having the tool of Download Festival. And then obviously when I was at Kili, Sonosphere and Warped Tour as well to really kind of try and bring in bands and things.
That's it. Give It a Name was like my favourite thing when I was in school.
Yeah.
Because that was the coolest shit going. So how important do you think it is then for a promoter's career to be getting those bands in early? Because you're never going to pick up a band like that.
Yeah, I mean,
once they've broke.
Stuart at Kili, it always resonates with me, something he always says, and that's you've got to have the ear for it. So you can learn the skills, you can learn how to do a costing, you can learn how to work with your marketing team or to market a gig and sell tickets and things, but you have to have the ear for it in the first place to know that you're on the right bands. So yeah, kind of really knowing your music, spotting things early is great. I've got mixed opinions on it now as kind of going into management and things as well, because I feel like the national promoters effectively are the demise of the smaller promoters in the indies. So with a lot of my acts now, I like the fact that my agents will still give gigs to local promoters and keep them involved as things grow, because the national side of it is just kind of taken over now, and there's so much competition on that. When I first started doing it, there was Livenation and SJM and maybe Metropolis, but now there's the AGs and all these others and worldwide deals getting done and things. So, but yeah, in answer to your question, like just having the ear and finding the right bands in the first place and having your niche that people kind of know you for is the way to go. Because it doesn't matter whether you're a promoter or an agent or a record label or manager, you're only as big as the artist you're working with. And that's something I always kind of remind myself of as I go.
Yeah. How important is it to have a big company behind you? If it's because it's really hard to make money on the small shows.
Mm-hmm.
So there's loads of bands where you can be like, oh, it'd be awesome to do a 200 cap room, but as an independent promoter, you're probably going to lose money on that show.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get around that if you don't have someone backing it, or how important is it to back it? How do the big companies view those early losses?
The big companies just know they're going to lose money on those first shows, but they do it as their investment in the band, or their flag in the sand to claim that band for themselves. And then if someone tries to move it to another promoter, they can go, hang on, I lost X amount of money before on this. So, but you're right, it's difficult for indie promoters, especially if you don't own the venue. I know Bob from Hitchin Club 85, he's been chatting a bit recently about how he's trying to buy Club 85 himself, because the only money he was making from the gigs there was the ticket revenue once he'd covered all his costs, and it's minimal. Whereas he knows if he can take over the venue, he's going to have the bar take as well and all the other auxiliary income that comes with it.
Yeah. What advice then would you give to somebody that wanted to be a sort of indie promoter?
Become an agent. I'm serious. That is my advice I give everyone. Like, if I was starting again, I would not have become a promoter. I'd have been an agent from the get-go or a manager.
Could you quickly explain then the difference between the two?
So I call a promoter a professional gambler. So you're bidding for shows, you're putting up as much money as you're comfortable putting up, and you're on risk. So if the show doesn't sell, you lose money. If you're an agent, you're more closely associated to the band. You're actually working for them and with their management team and their wider team, and you're taking a commission. So it doesn't matter if the show loses money, as long as the band's getting a fee, you're taking a percentage of that, usually 10%. Whereas promoters are working increasingly for less and less percentage now. The tradition is 20% go of the show profit after all the costs goes to the promoter, and 80% to the artist. But as bands get bigger, as competition gets bigger for it, increasingly, like if you're doing a stadium tour now, you're probably on 5% as a promoter, and you're probably happy with 5% of the revenue that comes from a Taylor Swift show or an Ed Sheeran show. But that's your only way to keep hold of it, because someone else will do it for that small percentage otherwise. But yeah, be an agent, not a promoter.
I love that as a piece of advice.
I've realised it more and more since I've moved into the management side, and I still do promote. I still freelance for Kili. I've got artists I've worked with for years that I don't want to give up. So I've just done a deal with Stuart to still do that on a freelance basis. But I have realised since becoming a manager that, and it sounds horrible to say, how the artists especially don't really value promoters. And I don't mean that in a nasty way. They just don't think about it. They've got their agent, they've got their manager. And I used to always feel like a pressure to be at every show and go into the dressing room with a bottle of champagne at the end and say, well done, or get plaques for them and things. But in reality, like when you see it from the artist side, they actually get pissed off when someone's just traipsing in their dressing room and they don't really know at the end, and they're trying to just chill out after pouring their heart and soul out on stage for an hour and a half. It's quite mad, and that's something I now have to manage, because I'm looking at kind of, I want the promoters to feel included and all the rest of it, but I also don't want my artists kind of knackered after they've played a gig.
And there's a random.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What was the decision then to move from Livenation to Kili?
So Stuart had left. I felt at the time that I didn't really know exactly what was going on. I was very much the new kid at Livenation at the time, and I quickly realised, going from the barfly, where, not to sound big-headed, I felt like I was quite important there with the work I was doing, to being kind of overlooked at Livenation when everyone's doing bigger tours than I was, and pop punk and emo wasn't the cool thing compared to the big pop tours and stuff. So
what sort of venue size were you doing when you were at Livenation?
It varied. It went from kind of first ever shows with bands in 150, 200 cap rooms just to get in early with the London show, up to, I think at that point I was kind of doing 1,000 to 1,500s in some cases. My first one that kind of got anywhere when I was at Livenation was Elliot Minor. I don't know if you remember them. They're doing a comeback at the moment. So we got them into the Astoria, and that was like my first, actually ended up being my only Astoria gig because it closed down shortly after. But that was my first kind of 2,000 cap kind of big band that started to get in the charts and do well. So, but I moved to Kili because Stuart gave me an opportunity to go. He said to me, come over and I'm starting this festival. I think it was called Hemispheres at the time rather than Sonosphere, as it went on to become. And I think there was a team of like 5 people in the office at that point, and it was owned by AEG. So I went over, I took with me Yumi at 6 and Elliot Minor and Kids in Glass Houses and various other bands that I was promoting at the time. And just felt more kind of independent and more kind of the spirit of the pop punk scene of what I was used to. So I do often wonder back, if I'd stayed at Live Nation, what my career path would have been. I'm sure I probably would have ended up working with a lot bigger artists and potentially still there and doing big arena tours and things. But even then, once I moved to Kili, my first big one with Kili was I got in really early on Katy Perry and ended up doing kind of Birmingham NIA with her and a couple of arenas. That first couple of tours with Katy was split between Kili, Live Nation and SJM. And then as it got bigger, it became more of a worldwide deal, and eventually I was kind of pushed out of it. But yeah, that was a nice career highlight, doing my first ever arena shows with Katy Perry. And I found her through I need to credit my wife because she was the one actually who tipped me off on her in the first place. But then I went over to Vans Warped Tour in America and met with her manager and her and kind of hustled for it to make sure we got some shows on it.
That's fucking cool, man. Yeah. Didn't expect you to say Katy Perry. Yeah, that's sick. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the podcast, but if you're enjoying it, please give us a rate and a review on Spotify or Apple. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a subscribe. It really, really helps the channel knowing that we've got the subscribers and people are listening and rating and reviewing it. It'll help us keep booking more guests and doing more podcasts. So do us that one little favor and we'll be able to keep booking more people and keep doing more episodes. Back to it. What were the sort of biggest challenges then with Kili? Because I didn't realize that it was that small and new at that point, because I remember sort of seeing Kili shows and seeing Sonosphere and stuff like that, and it was when Uprawr was starting to do like semi-well, and we hadn't heard of Kili, and the second that we saw it was doing all that stuff, we were like, fuck, we're idiots. How do we not know this company? We should have known who these were. Like, we're so behind.
Yeah, I mean, it works that way with the agents as well. Like they all knew who we were, like they all knew the promoters there from their previous roles, but Stuart had managed to take with him Metallica and Red Hot Chili Peppers and all these big acts that he'd always done over the years, because he's been doing it since, I was reminding the year I was born, so he's been doing it since 1984. So he had those relationships and took those artists with him. But when we had Sonosphere, and then when we launched Warped Tour in Europe and partnered with Kevin Lyman on that really put us on the map, especially in the rock side of things, because it meant me and Alan Day had the tool basically to, people kind of were bringing bands to us without us even saying the kind of, oh, if you want your band on our festival, we need to be a promoter. A lot of the time we weren't even saying that, they were just coming to us. And that was the time where I was picking up lots and lots of bands like State Champs and Citizen and various others in that scene. But it goes away pretty quickly. So once Warped Tour stopped and once Sonosphere stopped, and that was challenges in itself as well. Then suddenly all the agents are like, oh, okay, we need festivals for our bands. Let's go back to Live Nation now and work with Download or Reading and Leeds Festival. And Ben Ray had started Slam Dunk as well over that time, and was giving them an independent option for festivals as well. I mean, Sonosphere was brutal when it went for us, because we loved that festival, and it felt like it had a good reputation and a good vibe to it. But effectively, one of the biggest challenges facing the smaller national promoters is the financial side of it. So if a Live Nation or one of the bigger ones wants to get you out the market, the thing they can do is get their checkbook out and pay the headliners more than you can pay them. And Download, it's like 80,000 plus capacity, whereas Sonosphere we were basing around 50,000, and that was the kind of comfortable risk exposure level that we could run at, and also what tickets we could sell. Like even with Metallica and I Maiden, you were looking around that kind of 50,000 mark for a new festival that was still building its name. And then Warped Tour effectively ran its course. We did 3 years of it. We had a year off. We came back for one more year, or maybe it was 3 in total. I can't remember now. But Vans at the time kind of shifted its focus on where they wanted to spend their sponsorship money. And with that being a smaller indoor festival at Ali Pali, the profit on it was the sponsorship. So the ticket sales covered what I was paying the bands and the cost of the gig. And to justify doing it from a business point of view for Kili, the sponsorship money from Monster and Vans was what was going. But Vans were opening their House of Vans, and pummeling their money into that. I think they musically at that point they were starting to do a bit more with hip hop and things as well. So once that sponsorship money had gone, me and Kevin Lyman had to have a chat about it, and it just didn't make sense for either of us at that point. And I guess Warped Tour then was starting to wind down a little bit in the US at that point as well. Probably, I don't know the ins and outs of that side of it, but probably similar conversations from his end. So.
What sort of money does it take to get a 50,000 capacity festival going?
A lot.
Just like
you have to have deep pockets to do festivals, because you will lose money the first couple of years as well. So
is there an expectation of how many years you will lose money, or is it?
I mean, Warped Tour, we made money year one, which was great because we had that sponsorship. It was actually the following years that were more of a challenge, because then we were trying to get headliners, but a headliner that's big enough to fill Ali Pali wants to do Ali Pali as their own gig and make more money than we could pay them to be part of a multi-bill festival. So we got lucky the first couple of years, and then it was a lot tougher after that. But yeah, I mean, festival fees for headliners are ridiculous. Now I have this conversation with my artists that I manage now. Like, if you're headlining the festival, you're upwards of $1 million. If you're second or third on a main stage, you're a couple of grand, and you're probably losing money to do it, especially if you've got session musicians. So the gulf is pretty ridiculous there.
Is it more expensive to book a band for a festival than a tour show?
No, they'll make more money generally from a tour show. I guess it varies. If you're headlining Reading or Download and you're actually like a band that doesn't do stadiums yet, then yeah, you probably aren't getting paid more for the festival headline. But if you're a Metallica or a Chili Peppers or a known stadium act, then it's probably on a par kind of what they're getting paid. So.
Have you got any standout moments from Kili that you were just like, that was fucking cool?
I think my two big ones were my first Katy Perry arena show. I think it was Nottingham Ice Arena was the first one we did. I don't know what it's called now. It keeps changing its name. Everyone was in Motorpoint Arena. Yeah. So I went and stood at the top and kind of watched the show from the very back. So that was a nice moment. And then
at that point, you get to know the artist and be part of.
Katy had kind of blown up so quickly that my interactions with her were more kind of after the show. Once she'd finished her meet and greet, the manager would kind of escort us in for a quick photo and a hello. Like I met her more.
I love that you get escorted in afterwards for like a quick wave, and you're the guy that gambled the money on the actual event happening.
Yeah, but then now I see it from the management side as well. So, but I guess prior to that, I went to Water Rat's gig, and we were all hanging out after that. That was her first ever London show, and at Warped Tour there was a bit of hanging out and stuff. But the ones that you end up developing the relationships with are generally the more kind of rock acts that you know from the ground up. So like bands like You Me at Six and those kind of bands, I don't work with them anymore, but I still kind of count them as friends and hang out with them at festivals or at other gigs when we see each other and stuff. And they're the ones where once you go on the tours, you are hanging out a lot more. But yeah, the big pop acts is less so. Well, I do think, because Kili do Ed Sheeran, I'm not part of that team, but I feel like there's a lot more kind of closeness between Ed and his guys over there. And that's, I guess a lot of it's down to personality of the artists themselves.
Yeah. Why did you then decide to leave being a promoter?
I took quite a few knocks. So once Warped Tour and Sonosphere had kind of run its course, it became a lot harder to kind of battle for bands, either to pick up the new stuff or actually hold on to the ones I was doing. So I had 3 years in a row where I lost big acts to Livenation, and that was brutal. So You Me at Six, change management, change agent. As part of that, they decided to move it over to Livenation. That was a band I'd worked with from meeting them in Costa Coffee opposite the old Livenation office when I was there as 16, 17-year-old kids who were playing their first gigs. I'd put them on I kind of worked with them from there up. I lost them 1 year, I lost Parkway Drive another, and then I lost Neck Deep, and that was the kind of final one, because that was, again, I gave them, it's quite funny when I watched your interview with Leander recently, and he was talking about how he saw them support Me Versus Hero at Camden Bar Fight. It was me that put them on that tour, because I was managing Me Versus Hero at the time and promoting the tour. So Neck Deep were a band that I'd worked from their first ever gig at that Camden Assembly show that they played with Me Versus Hero. I was texting Kevin Lyman from Warped Tour saying, you need to check out this band. And a year later they were playing Warped Tour, and then once they got to Ali Pali level, it was suddenly moved over to Livenation so they could get their offers for the bigger festivals and things. So that was all happening at a time when I'd fallen into the world of like YouTube. So this is even prior to TikTok and Instagram. So I I'd got involved off the back of doing Warped Tour at Ali Pali. I'd had a phone call from a music industry friend who'd moved into the YouTube world and was working with YouTubers at a multi-channel network. So they were signing up YouTube channels to monetize them. I didn't know anything about it at that point. And he called me and said, Mark, you've done Ali Pali with Warped Tour. I think his words were along the lines of these kids who are big on YouTube have booked Ali Pali and sold 7,000 tickets and we're sponsoring it, but they don't know what they're doing. Can you help them out? So I was like, sure. We went and met with them, came up with a deal for us to provide services for them effectively. So manage the venue, manage the security, manage the production side of things. So their event could happen. It was an event called Summer in the City. And it had gone from being a meetup in a park that got shut down by police because too many kids turned up to a ticketed event with 7,000 people. And my eyes were opened up to this world where kids and parents were elbowing each other out the way to try and meet Zoella and Alfie and all the big YouTubers at the time. But there was also a stage, and they had like artists like Dodie performing on it and all these musicians that were big on YouTube at the time. But I was the only music industry person in the room. No one was paying attention to them. And if they were managed at that point, they were generally managed by marketing agencies who weren't thinking anything about the music side of what they were doing. And one of those early ones, as it is, played one of their first gigs because Patty was a big YouTuber at the time before he got signed to Fearless. So I started promoting tours with YouTubers, both musical and non-musical. Brought a new arm to Kili where effectively we were doing shows that weren't in the music space, but we were actually having to produce these shows as well. So coming up with the creative, with the talent and touring screens and couches and all the rest of it to, I guess, what is now the equivalent of like a live podcast tour, which wasn't really a thing back then. But that quickly spiraled into me then starting to manage some of the talent that I was finding. And at the time, my now business partner, James Hancock, he was working for an agency that were managing radio presenters on Capital and Radio 1 and sports presenters and things. And they were doing similar to me. They'd started to pick YouTubers as people with a following that they could take to radio and get on radio. And one of them was a musician called Bethan Ledley, who was doing stuff she was presenting on E4.
But I know Bethan pretty well.
Yeah, because she lives in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So she was doing a music project at the time. So James and Andy, who's our other business partner, they came to me and said, we've got Bethan on E4, but we don't really know the live music side. Do you want to co-manage her and help us out? So that was the start of what is now freefocus, the management company we have. So we're in our 10th year this year. We're about to celebrate our 10th birthday. But yeah, whilst all that was going on and I was starting to build in that world, I was losing acts as a promoter and kind of getting a bit jaded, and quickly realised that actually being a manager and having a proper contract in place, because when you're a promoter, your contracts are tour by tour. You don't actually have any long-term commitment unless you're putting up a hell of a lot of money for a worldwide deal. But as a manager, you're more secure. You're part of the team. You are the team. You're kind of building the team around you and things. And over the course of 5 years, I went from managing being the side hustle whilst I was a full-time promoter to it flipping the other way around and the promoting gig being the side hustle. And it actually teed up quite nicely for me timing wise. So Stuart at Kili said I must have had a crystal ball, because I actually handed my notice in at Kili and said I wanted to go freelance about a month before the pandemic kicked in, and suddenly touring just disappeared. So I was quite fortunate in that side that I had this agency that I'd been building as a manager. And at the time we were a team of 3 of us. And then quickly over the pandemic, that grew and grew and grew because people moved their ad spends from outdoor marketing to digital marketing. But by the time we came out the other side of that, and fast forward a few more years later, we're now up to a team of 8 of us and 40 plus clients, mix of influencers, TikTokers, Instagrammers, YouTubers. But where we differ from our competitors is we have that background in traditionals, whether it's James at TV and radio, or Elle, our head of talent, comes from a fashion and production background, or myself for the music industry. So we'll only take people on if we think we can do something beyond brand deals and influencer work. We never used to call them influencers. I've given up now and I have to call them it. I used to hate it. But
what did you want to call them?
Creators and talent. Yeah. So, but now everyone just keeps saying influencers, so we just roll with it. But yeah, effectively it was a blessing in disguise, the kind of knocks I took at towards the end of kind of doing the promoter full time, because now I'm owning my own business and it's quite nice working for yourself and doing.
It's funny that losing bands that you would have thought would have been like such a blow to your life,
and it was
like,
it was, and I did a lot of therapy off the back of it.
right?
And I heard the conversation you had with Leander about when he lost bands on the management side, and things. It is brutal when it happens. Yeah.
Did you take it personally?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think I've had to apologise to a few people since for things I said to them after it had happened. A few things I haven't apologised for that I won't apologise for to certain people as well. But I think as you get older, you kind of change your mindset a little bit to understand the cutthroat side of it. And there's probably people who feel like I've screwed them over the years as well. So it kind of goes around and comes around. But I do try not to be that guy to people.
What's the major difference then between working with an influencer creator and a band?
I think for us, what's quite nice with it, so I manage RØRY, I manage Noahfinnce. They're blowing up for us on the music side and the influencer side. What's really nice when you sign a musician who's got an online following is you've kind of got a leg up from the get-go versus managing a brand new artist with no following, because generally, not always, but generally they've got an income. So you're not managing starving musicians, you're managing people who can pay their rent, and in many cases can also pay to go in the studio and record, or pay their band if they need session musicians and can go on tour and things. So it's nice because we have other revenue streams that traditional musicians aren't getting. So whether that's brand deals as an influencer, generally you can sell more merch from the get-go and sell it online. You don't just have to sell it at gigs. It can be sold just through posting on your own socials and directing people to it. And then it can lead to other things like book deals or TV appearances. It has a negative side to it as well. So it's getting less and less now, but even when RØRY and I were discussing recently, there's still a bit of a stigma to being an influencer that does music.
Yeah.
Which is mad when you think about it with RØRY, because she wrote all these huge songs for other people. Like, she's proven herself as a musician, and the influencer side actually came after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's still like maybe a snobbery at record labels or even festivals when they're booking people that, oh, why do we want an influencer on it? So actually maybe they're just a great musician that's happens to have an audience that could buy tickets for your festival or could buy records. So.
Yeah. I guess there's like an assumption that they're not a musician and they just do get ready with me videos.
The irony with Noah is, Noahfinnce, when I signed him, I wanted to sign him because he had a track called Asthma Attack. It was like a ukulele YouTuber song at the time that was on millions of streams. And it was another creator of ours, Luke Cutthroat, who introduced me to him. And when I met Noah, he didn't actually seem to know if he wanted to be a musician or not. And I had a bit of an oh shit moment, because I was signing this creator that I thought was, because I'd seen Asthma Attack, I was like, oh great, this guy's going to want to do music, going to be great, we're going to smash it. He's got 1 million followers nearly on YouTube, here we go. And then there was this whole period where he didn't seem to want to do the music. And I was a bit like, okay, this is interesting. What transpired is he was struggling because he's transgender, so he was transitioning at the time. And I later found out he was worried about his voice. He'd go in the studio and his voice would sound one way one day and the next completely different. But once he kind of got past that and settled on his hormone treatments and things, and his voice had effectively dropped and settled where he was comfortable with it, then we started to put out a couple of singles on our own little label with the Orchard that we were doing at the time. But even at that point, he still wasn't kind of seeing himself as a touring musician and all the rest of it. And he jokingly now says he's glad I pushed him into it. I don't feel like I pushed him. Like, I never make anyone do a career path they want to do. But I did bring opportunities for him, including my relationship with Hopeless Records, which ultimately led to him getting signed off the back of. So we signed Noah, and now he's actually come full circle where he still does his YouTube videos every week. But if you look on his Instagram, he's a musician. He's not really a YouTuber in that respect. And he's done 4 tours of America now and multiple tours of the UK and had albums out, and just in the process of renewing his record deal with Hopeless and things. So it's almost like now I have to push him to actually remember to do the YouTube side of it. So.
If he hadn't have done the music, what would the career path have been then?
He still carried on making good money as a creator. So he gets his ad revenue from YouTube, which so every time he puts up a video, makes some money for that to pay his rent and all the rest of it.
Is it easier to make money that way than it is through being in a band?
I mean, it's money that you're filming the content yourself, you're editing it yourself, you're putting it up. It's essentially pure profit in that respect. I mean, there's costs of having the right camera equipment and things, but in the YouTube world, you can do that very cost effectively. Yeah. And then the brand deal side of it as well. So there's revenue to make there, even if he hadn't have been a musician. Would I have wanted to manage him if he was just doing the YouTube side? Probably not, because what gets me out of bed every day is the other side of it, the more exciting projects and things. So.
Have you found anyone that they're making the good money on YouTube and they think, I want to be an artist, and then they realize how expensive it is and how many people are going to take their money, and they just think, fuck that?
Yeah, it does happen. I mean, because we come from that world, we can work through it where we don't necessarily need to do a record deal. So with Rory, we worked with setting up her own label, Sadcore Records with Fuga, raised the funds to record the album and did it on our terms and got a lot better deal for that moving forward for Rox, and that kind of holistic DIY approach, which is a lot more work than having a label doing a lot of the legwork for you, but also a lot more control and kind of things. So yeah, you can come at it from a different way and still kind of have those conversations. The other one that sometimes happens is someone might have a following online, want to be a musician, but then when it comes to it, not actually want to put the work in, less than the money side of it. So actually getting songs written in the studio, rehearsals, all the rest of it.
What was the earliest success then as being an influencer manager that made you like just convinced that this was the way forward?
I mean, for me, it was the ability to have a sustainable business where we can put food on our tables and wake up happy to go to work every day and not working for someone else. That's probably the big one. We don't work with them anymore, but we managed Lad Baby, who got Christmas #1 5 years in a row. So we managed the first Christmas #1 campaign. So James, my business partner, was managing Lad Baby. They were blowing up on Facebook at the time. It seemed like everything they touched turned to gold. So videos were just blowing up left, right, centre. We got them a book deal. Various other stuff was going on. And then Mark, Lad Baby himself, said to James one day, keep getting fans saying we should do a Christmas song. I think we want to have a go at it. I was just like, so James came to me. He was like, Mark's got this crazy idea. He wants to do a Christmas song, but I don't know music. You know music. How do we do this? So we went into that not really having expectations of getting Christmas #1. It was more just, let's put out a Christmas song for them, give them something else to post about. We went to Steph Abingdon, who's a producer that was in the Midnight Beast. So I knew he could do the kind of parody comedy stuff. And he produced that first Christmas song for us. And we went to a distributor that specialized in kind of influencers putting out music, a company called 45, which was owned by a guy called Conrad, who used to be at Warner's, and did a distro deal for them to effectively be the label for that single. And then somehow it went on to become Christmas #1, which was quite a big moment. But ultimately we parted ways with them not long after that, because and then potentially our fault for saying don't go for it again for a second year, and they proved us wrong when they then went on to have 5 Christmas #1s. But effectively we weren't necessarily aligned on where we thought they should be going career-wise versus where they wanted to go. They were doing well financially, and I think they just wanted to do their own thing. So we parted ways. But that Christmas #1 was a bit of a oh shit moment for us, where we were like, okay, we can do things with talent, with this following that people might not expect you to do. So.
Is it easier working with someone where they're more solo than you've got a group of 5 people?
Yeah, I don't manage any bands. So I tried it before. So when prior to all the digital talent side of things, first band I ever managed was a band called Covergirl when I was at Cardiff Barfly. So they were like a local band in that scene. Along with when Kids in Glass Houses and The Blackout and all those bands were coming up, Covergirl were in that scene as well. But and then I managed Me Versus Hero from a pop punk band from Blackpool, who had a bit of a kind of 4-year strong kind of vibe to them. But yeah, it was a lot harder managing 4 or 5 personalities and different opinions than managing Rory or Noahfinnce or Leo, who we manage or has on the music side, where effectively, as managers, we're speaking to one person, talking through the plan, and then going out and hiring the right people to form the live band and things like that. So.
I remember when we started the club and we thought Me versus Hero was like the pinnacle of cool.
Why did they not break? I can't work out why they didn't get bigger like that.
I don't know, man. Like at the time they were doing like, I guess, reasonably well within like that small sort of scene. So within that scene, which like Uprawr was like in the middle of, like they were just the coolest shit going. But yeah, I guess they never like.
They always had huge crowds at Slam Dunk and Sonosphere and Warped Tour and stuff, but then never really went to that next level. So I actually used to co-manage them with Julie Weir.
Oh, sick!
Yeah, so.
Yeah, Julie's been on the podcast. Yeah, awesome. That's really cool, man. What has been the biggest change in the influencer space then for you managing, with it going from YouTube to TikTok?
It's a lot more instant now. So you can blow up off TikTok pretty quickly, but I still stand by the mentality that if you've got a big audience on YouTube or a big audience on Facebook, which people never really think about Facebook, they tend to be more community based and more invested. Whereas TikTok, you could have 3 million followers on TikTok and potentially not sell out a 200 cat venue. Whereas you could have 250,000 people on YouTube and sell out a 1,000 cat venue.
Yeah.
And that's just the engagement with the audience. So that's been one of our challenges as we've kind of evolved and taken on talent in different spaces, is kind of knowing what's legit fans that are going to buy things versus what's numbers for brand deals.
Did you have any hiccups with that when you didn't realise?
Not really. I mean, we have a comedian who we did a live show with, and it sold out. It was great, but it didn't sell out as quick as I thought it would, and that kind of was a little bit of an eye opener for me on that TikTok following versus YouTube following. But I wouldn't say we've necessarily had hiccups with it.
What do you consider to be a big following, and what are you looking for when you do sign someone?
So we're less worried on the total number of following. If we're thinking at it purely from a brand deal point of view, then we're looking at what's their audience demographic, because we're based in the UK. Most of the marketing agencies we're dealing with are UK, and our talent are all UK talent. So general rule of thumb, marketing agency that wants a brand to work with a talent is looking for 40% of that audience to be in the UK, which still sometimes makes me scratch my head, because surely like 20% of 1 million is still more than 50% of 50k.
Yeah.
But that's what they're looking for. I guess they've got different parameters they've got to show the brands that they're working with as an agency and stuff. So, but also engagement is the other thing. You could have 1 million followers, but they're very passive, versus 100k followers that are super engaged and liking and commenting on every post you're doing, and that can affect the amount of money you can get paid for a brand deal then as well.
How do you pitch an influencer? Or, I mean, are they coming to you, or are you like finding them and saying like, this is what I can do for you?
Our roster's like a whole mix. So I guess because we started in the YouTube community, a lot of our early clients were friends of each other. So we kind of get introduced to them by our own clients, and there's still a lot of that goes on. So that word of mouth side of things, or people coming to us because they'll see success with what we're doing, and then they'll look up who's managing that creator or that musician that they've seen doing well, and then get in touch with us. But effectively we're scouting, we're doing our A&R, we're looking for talent to sign, and part of that, especially as I get older and don't want to be trawling through TikToks myself 24/7, is empowering new managers to come in and build their own rosters. So in the last year, we've grown quite quickly in terms of promoting from within. So we've got Harry and now Tilly, who are started in their early 20s with us as assistants, worked up to coordinator, where we start to give them more responsibility and start to kind of test them a little bit and see if they're ready for it, and then eventually have moved up to become managers. And the nice thing there is it's giving us new, young, hungry managers that want to go out and find talent and sign talent and prove themselves, but have also worked with us for 2 or 3 years already and know what our ethos is as a business, versus we have in the past looked to bring in other managers, either from other agencies that are looking for a new challenge, or people who've applied for jobs with us, and we've never really felt like that's worked out, versus doing it our way and training people up.
Do you find it's similar to music, where everyone that works in music wanted to be in a band? Is it everyone that wants to work in this wanted to be a influencer?
A little bit more so now than when we started. So when we started 10 years ago, everyone who's getting into the industry was seeing an opportunity, but we were all in our 30s. or late 20s. So we weren't, no interest whatsoever in being YouTubers ourselves or TikTokers ourselves. When we advertise for assistant positions now, so the kind of junior positions within the company, and it's people kind of applying for their first job out of uni, then we see a lot of it where they're actually sharing their own social platforms with us with like 10 or 15,000 followers. So.
Once they're at management level, are they on a salary or is it a percentage of their clients?
Yeah, it's salary. So, I mean, this is where it differs a little bit again from music and influencer world. So I'm used to worlds where managers and agents work mainly for commission, where they're on a very low base salary. In the influencer space, it's the other way around. A lot of the time they're on quite a good salary or a reasonable salary, but there's no commission.
Right.
And there's maybe annual bonuses or quarterly bonuses if they're lucky. And that's been something we've kind of adopted the music industry side on it. So we pay a base salary that we know is fair and they can live off, but motivate them to really kind of have uncapped earnings effectively by giving them a commission as well. So a percentage of whatever they bring in for their managed clients.
How do you go about approaching brands for deals, or do they approach you?
Both. There is outreach from our side. So when we take on a client, we'll identify the brands that they feel align with them, especially ones that we've got relationships with the agencies for already, and we'll go pitch them to them. But a lot of it is brands and agencies coming to the talent themselves and say, we've got this campaign, are you interested? And I think a lot of that is them using their own tools on their side, like the influencer equivalents of Chartmetric, for example, and kind of identifying that audience that fits with what the brand's looking for. So a brand will go to a marketing agency and say, we've got X pot of money to spend. We want to hit 18 to 24-year-old females in the UK with this kind of fan base or following or these likes or interests. And then that agency needs to identify the talent to work with. So we're constantly taking meetings with all the major marketing agencies to make sure our roster's on their radar. So when they're having those conversations, they have us in mind. And you do see patterns where you'll get the same agencies coming back for the same creators and then different agencies coming in for other ones. So like with ADHD Love, they've had a couple, which is Rory's Instagram and TikTok account that she does with her partner, Rich. They've had 2 or 3 brand deals recently, all through the same agency. And that's just because they've been impressed with the work they've done before. They kind of see the reach they've got and stuff.
Do you have anything where like a couple of influencers get a particular brand and then everyone else wants it because it's like, charcoal toothpaste?
Yeah, I mean,
it was everywhere.
It's the same as music. So bands see other bands doing things. There is the jealousy angle, or the hang on, why are they getting that and I'm not getting that? And there's definitely that in the brand deal space as well. But yeah, I mean, usually if you see lots of creators working with the same brand, it's generally just because that brand's gone, right, we're going to spend a ton of money. Let's go out and spread the net. So Audible a few years ago, we're just spending on everyone. We had a few years back, we had Chubba Chups sugar-free lollies that were spending a lot of money on campaigns with our guys. And our guys were eating a lot of sugar-free lollies and then realizing the after effects of sugar-free isn't that good. There was one year of summer in the city where everyone was rushing to the toilet because there was Chubba Chups everywhere.
What are some of the like bigger challenges then that you face with like managing influencers that you didn't expect at the start?
I think the stigma side of it that I mentioned earlier, especially on the music side. I mean, we had so many early conversations when we first started the business. We were in the room with major labels talking about how we could provide them an arm of like A&R effectively to get music out for talent that were coming from YouTube back then. And with one of the majors, we got right up to the presidents of the London office, who pretty much signed off on a deal in principle, but on the condition that one of the A&Rs from one of the frontline labels within that building would take the lead on it. So then the business affairs person that I was dealing with took us in to meet with one at a time, all the different heads of the frontline labels. None of them got it at all. And it just never happened. So, I mean, we were probably too early at that point. Like, it's developed a lot since then. There's been a lot more success, but yeah, that's been a challenge for me, is I find it mad that you've got like Shawn Mendes and Bieber and talent that have blown up through YouTube, but aren't seen as YouTubers or influencers. But then you take a RØRY or someone else to a label and they don't get it.
Yeah. Do festivals see any value in being like, oh, they might not sell a ticket, but they've got a huge following that they can just stick the poster to?
You'd think, but it doesn't seem to work like that. Again, it's like, I guess, a snobbery in terms of influencers and things. And if anything, they'd rather have their marketing team go and book a load of influencers on free tickets, which winds us up as managers. It's like, okay, so you want to give them a ticket and have them come to your event and insist on a ton of posts about it to sell you tickets.
Yeah.
But you won't book them to play, or you won't pay them the going rate fee for access to their audience. But you'd spend more than that on an ad in a magazine where you've got no way of tracking the results.
Yeah.
So
What are the biggest like similarities
between music and influencer world?
Yeah.
I mean, audience is king. Audience is key. So if you're a musician with an audience, you've got a lot more power. You can have a lot more success in your career. Exactly the same in influencer world. The more following you have, the more success you can have. Everyone's creative. That's the other side of it. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're making a TikTok video or making a song that's using your creativity, and not everyone can do that. It does run kind of parallel, just the same as TV and music run parallel in that respect. It's forms of entertainment.
What are the sort of big goals then moving forward for you with your company?
I mean, me and James, with his partner, talk about this a lot. Like, we're in year 10 now, so we want to keep evolving. Naturally, I've ended up leading on the music side of what we do, and building that, and that's definitely an arm that we want to keep building on, while staying true to our world and what we know. So we're not necessarily going out signing someone that's going to be out and out pop. Like, I think I'd say this to them as well, like, but Rox and Noah and Leo, we kind of count them as in that kind of wonky space, so they can fit in that kind of young blood world where they just cross over between influencer and rock, or like having communities around them. The conversation I have with James quite a lot are, we could actually just go and have a roster of 4 or 5 clients as individuals, not have a big company, and probably in the short term make more money for ourselves as managers and just do our own thing. But I'm still young enough and ambitious enough where I want to grow the business to the point where we're competing with Insanity, M&C Saatchi, YMU, all those big agencies. And we're only going to achieve that by having the big talent.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be able to go out and sign those big talent when they're already big. We've got to A&R them, develop them, build them up like we have been doing.
Do you think you're at a good moment then where that snobbery around them being an influencer is about to dissipate and disappear?
It gets better all the time, yeah. And I think things like Rory getting top 10 album with a self-released album as a musician that's got a following online helps with that. And it gives us, as management, it gives us a calling card as well to be able to go and say, like, look what we did here. And me and Rox already are discussing, like, how do we build on that from her career? And that's not necessarily just her putting out her own music, but her as a songwriter. Like, what can we do with that? Can we develop together the next Rory? Can we find them and have her co-write with them and build them, and have her mentor them in that side whilst I manage the business side of it and do the manager role? So that's another ambition that we're kind of looking at. So.
That's cool. I guess there's just like so many things that are developing that it can run in any direction.
Yeah, the hard part is actually honing in and focusing and not getting carried away with too many different projects at once, and kind of making sure that you really, really focus.
Up to now then, what would you say your career highlights been across any of it?
I mean, it's obviously fresh, so Rox's top 10 last week was a nice big moment. Just various points at different kind of festivals and gigs that I've booked, and seeing bands succeed, knowing that I've played a small part in that. It's just the general highlights.
Is there a moment that you would go back to if you could?
What, to relive and then
just to be there and bask in it again?
Every time I think of one, I don't think of a negative that came along with it.
Oh, give me both.
I mean, like, Warped Tour was such a kicker for me because it was a huge career highlight bringing that to the UK.
Was that the first time?
Yeah. But it was headlined by Lost Prophets. And a week later, Ian Watkins was arrested. So it was like
that soon?
Yeah, literally. And then all the press was, I think there was like, they were talking about it on This Morning or Good Morning Britain or one of those. And there was some idiot on the couch saying, well, how could they have not known? His tour was called the Warped Tour. I'm like, come on, give me a break. Like, And then the following year was when Watsky jumped out the lighting rig and gave 2 people in the crowd life-changing injuries.
Yeah.
So it's like, cut me a break. Can we not just have a great career highlight without some negative side to it? So
before we finish then, is there any advice that you would give to somebody that wanted to get into either management, or I guess you've already shared the promotion advice, be an agent. But I guess getting into the management side of things.
I mean, it's the same whether it's management or labels or anything. I've never got a job in this industry based off sending a CV to someone and telling them what results I got at university. I've got the jobs through networking, knowing people, being told that someone's looking for something, and then eventually on the management side, starting my own thing. So I always like massively respect when someone reaches out and like asks if there's jobs going, but also tells me what they've done so far. And then, it's very much not what you know, but who you know, and having a work ethic as well. I feel like, I sound like an old man now, and I'm sure people used to say the same about me when I was younger, but I feel like the work ethic in more kind of Gen Z people coming through is quite different to millennials and above, that feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm just old and boring.
No, I see it at work all the time.
It's quite 9 to 5 a lot of the time. So if I see someone actually willing to go above and beyond, and maybe that's more for me, maybe people these days have got a better work-life balance, but for me, I like to see someone hustling, and especially the music industry, it is a lifestyle 24/7 job. So
yeah, I think that they talk about like work-life balance. I think if you'd love the job, then you don't need it. Like, it's a lifestyle.
I say I'm married to an agent, and my job is my life, and her life is her job as well. Like, that's kind of the path you take if you want to get into this world. So maybe that's the advice. Only get into it if you're all in and want it to be your life as well as your jobs.
What advice would you give to an influencer then, if they're a real influencer but they're at the start?
Build a community around you. So Noahfinnce's success, in addition to like his skills at writing songs and the content he creates, is the community he's built around him. So Noah's got this amazing, supportive LGBTQ plus community that when he goes on tour, they turn up and they want to be part of this movement. Same with ADHD Love and Rory. Rory's got this amazing community of people that are there because they relate to the songs. They might be recovering alcoholics themselves. They might have ADHD. They're part of this world that she's created. And that extends beyond our music talent as well. Like, I work with Bronte King, who started a group on Facebook called Gals Who Graduate. It's now evolved into a fully fledged business called Gals Who. But it started as a Facebook group for women leaving university who were kind of going, oh shit, what am I going to do for a job? All my friends have moved to different cities now. Who am I going to live with? How am I going to cope in a big city where I'm worrying about female safety, for example? And gender balance in the workplace. So Bronte built this community that quickly blew up, alongside her blowing up as an influencer as well. And now is doing Gals Who Travel, which is trips all around the world, like 6 trips a month, 24 girls each trip, safe space to go. And she's built a business out of that. And that's because of that community she's got there. And then there's Gals Who Sweat, there's Gals Who Get Engaged, there's all these different amazing communities. So yeah, whether you're an influencer or a musician, just building an audience gives you the power to kind of choose your own destiny. You can then pick the career path you want to go down, knowing that you've got that audience there to support it. And then the trick is, how do you take it from that community that you've built and take it to the next level? And that's where we're at with Rory and Noah now. It's like, how do we branch them beyond those communities that will come out to every gig and keep growing it into a more mainstream thing that gives them that sustainable career for 20, 30 years?
It seems like a much better business plan than it does just to be like, let's put out an album and see if people listen to it.
Yeah. Especially when an album these days costs 6 figures to record properly, promote properly, tour, make music videos, market.
Do you think the entire career, like industry, not just influence but music, is going to go more into that?
I mean, it already very much is. Like, there's so much now within A&R record labels where they're looking at numbers before they even listen to the music of someone.
Yeah. So, is there anything before we finish then that you'd like to mention or promote?
I feel like we've covered quite a lot of ground, haven't we? Put me on the spot. I should have thought about that one before I got here. Rory's got her tour coming up in March.
Yeah.
So that's nearly sold out. So don't wait around if you want to get tickets for that one. Noah's going to be doing Slam Dunk Festival in May. That's his only UK festival this year because he's writing his second album at the moment. I'm working on another project that's not yet been announced, so I can't talk about. Yeah. And then check out Leo, LLEO. So Leo toured with Rory. She's managed by Elle and myself at Free Focus. An incredible songwriter, producer, and we're working with her on building an audience now so that we can really supercharge what she's doing.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on talking. It's been really interesting.
Appreciate it.
Thank you to everyone that's listened. If you want to watch us, we're on YouTube. Please follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We'll catch you next time. Bye.